All right, howdy folks. Welcome to the development stream. It's not really, I guess it's not really a development stream necessarily. I'm not going to be doing any coding. I've done that enough all day. I think we're just going to play around and see what we can find to talk about. I will talk about some of the changes I made recently and kind of what I'm trying to do kind of immediately. But for some of you, it might be the first time seeing this just kind of live like this. I traditionally have done devlogs, which is kind of how I prefer to do it, but this is fine too. So I have been programming this for, well, I've been working on this all day, so hopefully nothing breaks. Let's see. Let's start a new career. I really like this keyboard that I made. It's fully functional too, which is kind of neat. I really like the keyboard in the old 2K games. If you remember that, all the buttons work and everything. But I find myself using this random key a lot. I decided to switch the starting year minimum to 1980, and we'll do Arizona. If you guys have any questions or curious about stuff, just let me know. And yeah. So it basically creates a random coach, and then it lets you edit. We can use a random name or just, we'll go with Polaco. Let's see. Got the birth month. Hats aren't working. A lot of hairstyles, which is kind of fun. Got the color picker and everything. That's kind of fun. Got the long hair, of course. If you guys want, you can make your mullets. Eventually, I'm going to add a whole bunch of different options and all that. And there's a decent amount right now, but I like to have a lot of creation options. Origin CA says game looks great. I think visually it has a bit of an identity, which I like. And yeah, it's heavily reminiscent of something else, but it's a really cool style. The Dazzling Globetrotter says greetings and salutations. Howdy. We have only 5 head styles right now. Got necks, different eyes. If you guys notice, the avatar is blank now. So if you've seen anything before, the eyes or the avatar was not animated, so that's kind of cool. And then, of course, we have a couple skin shades. A couple different mouths. Some mustaches. And then we only have 2 options for the clothes right now. We got the polo and the suit. And once version 1 comes out, you're only going to be able to do OC or DC. I'm not going to give the option to start as a head coach because I like the idea that every playthrough, you start from the beginning. So, but for testing purposes, I threw in head coach. And then I changed around this panel recently. These 3 things are modifiers: morale, install, and health. And originally, the players and the coaches had slightly different modifiers. Players used to have condition. And they had condition as an extra one, so they had 4. And then coaches only had morale and install, but I decided to just unify everything and give coaches and players the same 3 modifiers. Dazzling says the ESPN 2K style is timeless. It sure is. It's really not in use anymore. Like this kind of aesthetic, the old Sports Network aesthetic, isn't really in use. And it's kind of sad because it was really unique and it gave... it just had very unique visuals and it made it really interesting to look at. I also recently kind of gave the... What is this? The dialogue box, I guess? Kind of made it look a little bit prettier, so I widened it and changed the font, added the red rectangle. And the skills, we'll just go random. But basically, I'm not sure if this will be the final system, but you kind of pick these different categories here. And so your minor skills start out a little bit higher. Your major skills a little bit higher than that. And then your specialization is your highest skill. And right now the point scale is up to 30. So you start 50% of the way there. The thing is that because it's not a traditional 100-point scale, leveling up is going to be a little bit more like an RPG game where it takes a little bit longer. Which I kind of like more because it kind of gives characters a little bit more time to have an identity instead of their stuff always being like in fluctuation or increasing. If you allow characters to kind of stay at a certain state for a while, you kind of develop an identity around them. At least that's what I've noticed. Origin says, game is very visually appealing. You knock that part out of the water. I'm very visually oriented, and so the visuals and the UI were very, very big thing for me. Got a little bit of a UI, not really a bug, but I need to change the text to where it's shorter here. So we got all the skills, and then your attributes are these here. I may or may not add a couple more, but I think 5 is a good starting point. So the same concept. It depends on your class, which is up here. And this white rectangle is supposed to have like a class icon or something that embodies the class. I just don't have those assets yet. So the tactician is going to get, boosts to playbook stuff and things like that. The emotional class is going to get boosts to probably like coaching and like stuff that has to do with morale. The manager, he gets boosts to hiring coaches, so he'll have an edge compared to the other classes for hiring. And the developer is going to get a boost to XP for players. And the traditional class is they get a boost to stadium attendance. That's kind of how that works. And each class starts out with different attributes. So each one of these skills is governed by one of these attributes. So let's say your scouting skill is here. It's not just your scouting skill alone, it's your scouting along with your, I think it's development. So this and this are combined to determine your final rolling numbers, basically. And then one of my patrons suggested that we actually start out without a job. And I guess the idea is that, one, it would kind of prevent you from having to come back to this screen. Like if you don't like these terms, you'd probably like go back and then load back in and try to get a better contract. And so to avoid that, you just kind of load into the world, and then the jobs that are available is what you can pick from. So I think I do like that idea. It's just not implemented yet. So, your standard stuff, you got your goals, your results, your details. You do get on the hot seat, and pretty much what that changes is basically there's a chance to get fired at different points in the season. So this AD has, I think it's a 2% chance roughly to fire you early if you're in the hot seat, and then mid-season and late season. And I think hot season activates with, I think it's if you're 50% through your contract and you haven't completed any of your goals. I think that's what triggers hot seat. Dazzling says, for some reason, sports game and menus visuals are often overlooked aspect of modern AAA sports titles. Yeah, that's true. But it's not really. It's not just sports games. It's, if you look at a lot of different, pretty much any genre, it's really sort of a game development convention. You see this sort of glass tile UI design, and it's not bad at all. It's just it's devoid of character. But it works. It's clean, it's simple, it's easy to navigate. And so I think developers kind of default to that now instead of trying to make, something that's really unique and has a lot of character. I'm not sure why that changed. The only thing that I can guess is that it just became convention, or that in trying to develop like a really unique UI design, you run the risk of kind of over designing it, and then it becomes difficult to navigate. So you look at like PS2 era games, or just like older games in general, like games that are like more than 20 years old. A lot of them have really unique UI designs, but a lot of them, it's kind of a toss up on if it's going to be easy to understand. I think that might be playing a part in it as well. Origin says, is the team name not implemented or just unknown? It says Benson. Right now it just has the team name because some of the names are kind of a little bit long, and so it does run the risk of running off the panel. So I guess I could make like an abbreviation for each, like generate an abbreviated name, but I'm not sure how I'm gonna do that. But right now it just has the team name. It doesn't have their nickname. And then this, you'll end up seeing this panel a lot. It's kind of like your home screen. It kind of gives you an overview. So it has the morale of the entire team. I think that includes coaches, the install, the health, and then the legacy and prestige, and then the spending of the team. And of course their rating averages. And then the AD has this these two properties here. So that means that he promotes only offensive coordinators to head coach. So if you're a defensive coordinator and you're under this guy, you don't have a pathway to become head coach. So that's something to think about. And then he prefers prestige over legacy. Prestige is like recent success, and legacy is historical, like all time. And I think that's a cool way to separate the team's history or a character's history, because you have their all time and then recent, because those are usually different. Oh, what do we get here? Let's see. Oh, I forgot to turn off this. Let me fix this real quick. I had recently added the ticker to the bottom, and it's trying to get the week before this week, which there's no game, so it's gonna mess up. Let me just comment all of that out for now. And we get to restart. Yay, bugs. I think that should be good. coming up here. Somewhere here. There we go. We'll just go with this guy. Let's see, I think... Dang it. Let me go over something I did with the names that is messing up too. I think it was... Code World. This was yesterday. I think that's good. Like nothing breaks. I think we're good. Alright, so one of the things that I did recently that I didn't necessarily have it planned, but I decided to do it anyway. And that's the player skills. Well, really just the point scale in general for skills. Both players and coaches. So it was originally, you know, the traditional 100-point scale. But I didn't really like that because I felt like I didn't want you to have to sit there and to compare like 75 versus 72 and like 79 versus 83 and make those small distinctions. And instead, I wanted you to be able to tell right away, you know, who has what skill, and for it to be more of an identity thing. I don't know if you guys ever played NBA Showtime. That game had I think it was a 20-point scale. And so some players, you know, were the best players had like 18 or 19 in some skill. And then like the worst skill was like in like 2 or 3 or 4 or something like that. And I know it doesn't look like you might expect like in sports games, because you see an 8 and a 5 and a 1 and a 4 and you think, man, this guy sucks. But the way I'm thinking about it is more that it's more like an RPG game that has a smaller point range compared to a 100-point scale. But it takes longer to get to the top. And so what's going to be really important is getting the EXP. So every player has um, this number here, and that's their EXP rate. And that exact number will probably change. But I think right now the base is like 150. Because I was trying to figure out, okay, how much EXP should a player get if they played in every single play in a game? So I just came up with the number 150 for various reasons. And so the floor is like 150, and what this means is that it's going to take 179 EXP to generate 1 point for upgrades. And there's only currently 10 skills. I used to have it was like 20 something, and I just felt like it was too much. Instead of having 10 skills, I thought it would be a better idea. Instead of having like 30 skills, I thought it would be a good idea to have a fewer number of base skills, and instead use traits and abilities to differentiate players. And so all of this combined, I think, makes a decent little system to where every player has an identity, both in their traits and if they have any abilities, but also in their skills, because their skills are obviously going to change, but it's not going to be like in traditional sports games where it's changing all the time. The players do have modifiers, so the modifiers kind of help keep things fluctuating, but it's not like their skills are actually upgrading like every week. And I think it's a good little system. So you end up looking for, because what I wanted to avoid was throwaway players. And in traditional sports games, there's always, you know, those players that are at the bottom of the depth chart that just, you know, take up space. They're never going to see the field unless someone gets hurt. And that's, you know, that's obviously realistic, but it's kind of boring for roster building, because if roster building is just, you know, put the highest number at the top, to me that's not very fun. I think there has to be multiple ways for a player to be valuable. And so with traits, abilities, and skills, even the weakest player has their one trick. You know, they have their one way in which they could be useful. And so you'll see every player has at least one trait. And the traits are, what the traits are is the players have a number of hidden values, and they're the same for every single player. And then what a trait means is that there is either a high or a low deviation. So for example, this guy here is smart. So that means he has his install modifier goes up faster than normal. And he's obedient, which means that he has a lower chance than normal of maybe getting into trouble. And the reason why being smart would be valuable is morale and install both debuff skill. So because of morale and install, he's losing minus 8% of his total skill. And abilities are a little bit more rare. And it's actually tough to come up with unique abilities for football because there's only so many different kinds of actions that a player can do on the field. You know, it's not like a fantasy game where they can, you know, have jetpacks or they can cast spells or all this stuff. And I think a mistake that some sports games make with abilities is abilities just become like plus, like for example in All Pro Football 2K8, it's a great game. And the reason why their abilities were like this is because they didn't have the traditional rating system. So having, for example, like quick feet just means that you have like 80 speed, which is still a cool way to do it. I think it's an interesting way to do it. But I didn't want abilities to just be a name for having high speed or something like that. But that said, it is kind of tough to find unique actions. So I found a few, and I'll probably find more. But I think what I ended up settling on was mostly situational abilities. So some players are better in certain situations. Like, for example, Acrobat, I think, is... he gets a buff to catching. His catching is 3 right now. He gets a buff to catching if there's a bad pass thrown. So the reason why that would be useful is if maybe you have a bad QB or there's something that's affecting the QB right now, you would probably want someone with Acrobat to kind of make up for it. I think First Strike is... he gets a buff on first downs. And I think Clutch is... I think it's a buff in the 4th quarter, I think. So, something like that. There are more unique abilities, but a lot of them are situational, which I think is a decent way to do it. And currently we're controlling the defensive depth. We can change that though. Another thing that I didn't really like in the traditional sports game was that every player had an overall rating. And so it just seems like most of the time you just look at that overall rating, and you can have a million different player ratings, but then if you're only looking at that one rating, it makes you wonder why even have all these player skills if you're just going to look at the one number. And really, the overall, I think, is a little bit distracting and deceiving, because if you look at player ratings, you're going to find ratings that you value more, and so the overall isn't going to really be the overall. And so it didn't make sense to have it. Both because it just kind of makes roster building more obvious, I guess. But it also, it kind of takes away your ability to decide who is valued at what. And so instead of that, I decided to have no kind of overall rating. You decide what the player's value is, and then if you want, you can assign these grades here. So everyone is default to blank, but so we're looking at linebackers here. For a linebacker, you'd probably want coverage and tackling, I guess. So let's look at who's our best coverage, our best tackler. This guy, Tom Drew. We might put Tom Drew here at the top, and we might say, I feel like he's a B right now, at least relative to our team. And then maybe I think, well, I like that this guy has 7 coverage, but I don't quite think he's at Tom Drew's level, so I'm going to put Mark here. And so now we got Tom and Mark with a B and C grade. And then this guy, Graham, he's not quite at the level of the other 2 guys, and so we might put him maybe at a D. So you guys get the idea. He's got good traits. Well, he's got one good trait. So he has a higher chance to not fumble the ball. So that's called ball secure. He is devious, so there's a higher chance for him to get into trouble. But he does have a lot of abilities. He's got road player, so he's better on the road. He gets a boost on the road. Forget what defender was. I don't have the list open right now. Second down boss, I think that means he gets a boost to something on second down. So a lot of these players become situationally valuable, and I think that's a good way to simulate roster building. Let's see. I'm taking a look at my chat here. I don't know if it's updating or not, or... Let's see. Hello. Does that show up? Yes. Okay. So that's kind of what I was thinking as far as roster building and like the player system, the player skills and the traits and the abilities. And none of that was in the game like a week and a half ago. And I've been prepping a build for someone to mess around with, and probably going to make a video about it. And I just felt I felt like the players didn't really have identity, and I felt like there wasn't really any sort of game to roster building. It just felt like the same as every other game, to where you're just looking at double-digit numbers and, you know, putting the high numbers at the top, which is what you're doing here, but there's more angles to it. And that's really what I care about. I don't want there to be just one way to evaluate a player. I want there to be multiple ways. And I think this is a good way to do it. I added a little gradient to the little power bars, which I think looks really nice. And then these little green slivers here, Those are all the buffs from team equipment. There's currently team-wide equipment. So if you put one kind of helmet on, it's going to buff every single player the same way. I thought about going, like having each player have their own equipment slots, but I just thought that would be a little bit too much to manage. And I think doing it team-wide kind of makes you prioritize, what kind of helmet you want, what kind of cleats do you want, all that stuff. So it kind of adds another layer. And I do plan to add position changes. It's just currently not implemented. Because while there's, players at certain positions, sometimes a player might be valuable multiple different ways. So I think that having the ability to switch player positions would be helpful. Now I think there will be hard caps on how many players you can have at a certain position. And I think I want to make it mandatory. So where you can't have any more or less than the number. So for DBs, you have to have 8. For linebackers, you need 8. For wide receivers, you need 6. And I think I wanted to avoid having like 80 players on the team, because one of the strengths of, for example, basketball video games is that you can have a complete roster with 10 players basically. And so you become intimately familiar with all the ins and outs of those 10 guys. And it's really the top 5 and maybe a couple bench guys. And so you become really, really attached to, the 5 guys that are on the court. And football, there's 50 plus players, sometimes way more than that. And it just becomes hard to really appreciate, the different characters and personalities on your team. And while there still are, I think it's currently 53 with the way I have it set up. There's 53 players, but I wanted to try to cap how many players you can have on the team, just to avoid the issue of just having too many players and not really valuing them, So that's kind of the gist for what I've been doing with player skills, modifiers, and the EXP. I guess I'll talk a little bit about the modifiers. So there's 3 modifiers. You have morale, install, and health. I'm thinking about making little icons for this instead right here. I actually wonder if I could do icons for all the skills. I don't know. So morale changes with game results. So if you win a game, their morale goes up. If you lose a game, the morale goes down. And that's based on a player's specific rate. So some go up faster, some go up slower. Well, everyone actually has the same rate, but if they have the positive or negative trait, then it's either higher or lower. Install is actually one of my favorite modifiers, or it is my favorite modifier. So the way install works is kind of how it sounds. You have to install players. So if you get a new player on your team, their install modifier drops to 0. If you change schemes, for example, their install drops to 0. You get a new coach or whatever, and he has a different scheme, it drops to 0. And the only way install goes up is with time. And just like morale, each player has their rate. If you have the smart trait, your install goes up higher. If you have the dense trait, it goes up slower. And I think morale and install, it might be all three, but I think it's just morale and install that scale skills. So because it's at 36 right now, he's not, not very happy. His skills are affected by that. He is fairly installed at 83. So his skills are not super affected by low install. And then there's also health. Penny Feather, hello, how's it going? Install is a cool modifier. Great idea. Yeah, I think install, it's because I remember, playing like, I don't know, some other football game, and then you can have a new playbook every single week, and you're fine. You can do all kinds of new things and not be affected one single bit. And I thought, well, that's not really. I feel like there should be a penalty to that. Like, you shouldn't be able to just switch your entire scheme on a dime. You have new players come in, they have to be acclimated, they have to, learn the system. If you change systems, everyone has to adjust. So imagine switching from, let's say you're running a balanced offense, and you get the bright idea, like, let's go, run heavy or something. If you switch schemes, every single player on your roster is going to drop to 0 install. Now, it's not going to disable your team, but it's going to significantly affect them to where it's going to take a while. By mid-season, everyone will be fairly acclimated. And then by the end of the season, everyone will be pretty set. So I think that's a really interesting mechanic that no one's ever done before, but it's also realistic. So I really like install. And then health is, I think health changes, or is going to change with hits. So once we get the field component working, each time a player is involved in a collision, they have a chance to lose health. Not every single time, but depending on just, well, it really depends on their toughness, which is another hidden attribute that's affected by the trait. So toughness is the same across the board for every single player. But if it says tough in their traits, that means that they have a lower chance to lose health. And if it says feeble, that means they have a higher chance to lose health. Klep says, exactly. The one thing I would suggest is that a new coach can offset some of the penalty. For instance, an air raid guy might cause every player's install to drop to 0, but raises QB wide receiver skill. So it would be like a coach ability, I guess. I think it would be interesting to have coach skills or coach properties that affect player skills in some way. The only problem is I have to be careful with how many things are buffing player skills, because there's only 30 points. And so, I mean, I guess it could be impactful even with just, 1 or 2 points. But I have thought about that. That's actually, at the very beginning, I did have it to where coaches buffed certain positions differently. But what I noticed is that there was just too many things affecting player skills to where you were getting attacked from too many different angles, and it was kind of, I felt like it would be tough to manage all the different sources of buffs. But I think with a lower skill range, with more powerful increments, or with greater value between increments, I think you can do stuff like that better. Like you can have a coach that's +1 to this, and even just that +1 or 2 is going to have a big impact because of how the rating range is actually calculated. Klep says because that's where his scheme is centered. Makes sense. I think at the very least something like a coachability, which there are coachabilities. I think something like that would be good. Like it could be something like maybe instead of install being set to 0, it gets set to 10. Or it gets set to 20, something like that. Klep says, when is this game coming out? Well, I was originally looking at a 2-year dev cycle, and I think I'll still be close to that. The issue is that I had to switch engines, and it was totally better for me to do what I did, but I did have to do it. And so I had to switch engines and essentially rebuild whatever I had of the game in a separate engine. And really, I didn't really end up reusing a lot. I reused like general logic, but not a lot. I rebuilt everything from the ground up and better. So that kind of set me back a few months. But I think I was looking at hopefully starting like some kind of very closed testing by the end of the year. I don't know if I'll hit it exactly by the end of the year, but at the very least, I'm thinking like early Q1 of 2025 to start some kind of testing. And then depending on how that goes, and depending on a couple other things that may or may not happen, who knows? Maybe have some kind of open testing or something like that by Q2 or 3 of 2025. So that's kind of all I really have concretely. Super long term, well, not super long term, but more long term, my guess is that I have version 1 complete sometime next year. So that's kind of a little bit farther out projection. Klep says, I definitely wishlist it as soon as it's possible. Yeah, funny story there. So several months ago, I had my Steamworks account or whatever set up, and it wasn't accepting my something was wrong with my account and I couldn't verify it. And so I was just having trouble with it, and it wouldn't take whatever I was giving them, and then I ended up getting a refund for the $100 I paid. And so I still need to pay those $100 again and then resubmit some kind of other document. So Steam is kind of, you know, a little bit of a hurdle, but I definitely need to do it because, you know, more time on Steam, more wish lists. It kind of helps with exposure, I hear, so definitely need to do that fairly soon. Let's see. I really like the faces. I think with more avatar pieces, it'll look really cool. But even with the ones that are in right now, there's a fair amount of variability. And what I like also is that the face kind of matches the name. Because I did actually program in like nationalities and like ethnicity. So people that have fair skin are likely to have more European names. People that are a little bit more brown or tan they might have names from a variety of different places. It could be Hispanic, it could be, you know, Arab. If they're a little bit darker, they might be Indian. And then there's a chance for exotic names. So every ethnic group has the largest chance for getting American names. But there is a small chance to get what I called exotic names, which is all that means is like if you know, if you're fair-skinned, you might get an exotic name from like Poland or Russia or, you know, Germany or something. And then if you're dark-skinned, you might get, you know, a name from Saudi Arabia or something like that. Or from Portugal or something. So it kind of adds more variety to the names. And shout out to Gundar for getting all these names. He got me a list of like 60,000 names or something. That was pretty cool. So that's kind of the what's going on with depth chart. So formation subs doesn't really mean anything right now because I have no field component. But I do have it. Like I can. Oh, I'm not the depth manager. On offense? What about? Yeah. The formations are randomly generated. Formation names don't quite work right now, though. If we switch over to defense... Whoops. I think I can switch these guys, right? Yeah. If I wanted to switch Errol here for Brian, let's say. Now Brian's in. So pretty basic. There is a bug here, though. It doesn't show up all the time, though. I still haven't figured it out. Or I haven't really spent any time on it, but sometimes this little red highlighter Sometimes I'll load into a team and like there won't be a position highlighted, or there will be several positions highlighted. I'm not sure what's going on there, but something to fix. It just doesn't affect really my ability to actually use the screen, so. And really, the player skills is the biggest thing I've been doing, because I had to change a lot of things that were tied to the original system. So that kind of took a while. But I think it's good. Oh, because I changed the player skills and I whittled them down to 10. I also got rid of strength, and instead it's just weight now. I know it's not totally accurate, but I did like the way Bill Walsh had their offensive line and defensive line rating system. I think it was literally just weight. So whoever was heavier, you know, had higher chance of better outcomes. So if you want to find out which players will turn out better in collisions, you just have to look at weight. And height, you know, maybe height scales weight a little bit. I'm not sure. But for sure, weight by itself is basically the strength rating. And I thought that was probably smarter, because now you don't have to think, okay, weight, you know, divided by strength or whatever. Now you can just say, okay, this guy's 190. You know, this guy's 204, so he's going to be stronger. So I think that was a good way to do that. I did change the equipment a little bit. I think I originally had like 9 categories, but I got rid of some and I just switched it down to 5. That way it's a little bit more manageable, and there aren't as many buffs affecting your team. So before equipment worked, the way it worked was, I think it was by position. So like a helmet would be plus, you know, 2.5% skill to QBs, or plus, you know, 3% to running backs, or whatever it is. And because I wanted to get rid of like all these decimal points and these tiny percentages, because it's tough to evaluate as a user, you know. You definitely don't want to sit there and do the math. So having, you know, round numbers and having smaller numbers that mean more, I felt like was a much better way to do it. So currently equipment is, they have skill buff and then they have damage resistance. So this will be taken into account on collisions. So better equipment will tend to have higher damage resistance. So right now, total, we're sitting at 21%. So we're 21% above baseline damage resistance. So if you happen to get worse equipment, you know, you'll be more prone to losing health, and when players lose health, there's a chance that there's like a critical hit, and depending on how high or low their health is, or depending on how critical it is, that could get their health down to 0, and that means an injury. So damage resistance will be important. And then this is a little bit more straightforward, you know, routes +2, punting +1, jetting, tackling, whatever. Secondhand says, you gonna load Fortnite soon, or am I watching the wrong LGBT stream? I'm not really a Fortnite player. So we got you know, 5 equipment slots. And that's kind of it. There's also weekly practice, which isn't Secondhand says, well, I'll keep looking for my dream stream. Adios. Well, good luck with whatever you're doing. Weekly practice. This is kind of simple. It's very simple. It's not something that you necessarily have to interact with very much. Might have to change how practice bonus is determined, because it's sitting at 0. Sometimes it doesn't say 0 though, so I'm not sure. So there's only 2 plans. There's 2 settings. You can either set them to recover or to train. So if they're training, they're gaining XP. Not as much as during a game, but still something. And then if they're set to recover, they're gaining health. So it's kind of a binary thing, one or the other. And currently I'm in control of both sides, but the AI coaches will have their own thresholds for when they switch a player to train or a player to recover. And so, as I said, you don't really have to sit here and micromanage this. You just, you know, if you know a player has low health, you might want to come in, if you're even in charge of the practice. You can just come in and say, let's see, Gabriel here, his health is low, so we're going to set him to recover, and then you just walk away. That's it. So there's that. I've already gone over these in a previous stream. This, I'm not quite sure where this is going to go. I do like the idea of fan base abilities. These would be a different set of abilities that that comes with the fan base. So every fan base is different. Some fan bases are just better than others. Depends on where you land. This fan base has 4 abilities. And the way these are supposed to work is during the games, there's basically like a meter or something that will fill up over time, and then once that's full, you can use one of these abilities. And every fan base will at least have false start, but they might have something more useful as well. And then They also have these passive effects. I think these are percentages. So every visiting QB loses -2% to their final roll. Running backs lose -4 to their final roll, and so on. So some fan bases will have better passive effects, and some will have worse. And then there's some information on how high or low their rate can be, or how valuable their wins or losses are to the fan base. I think hardcore is the percentage below which attendance can't fall below. So if it's 4% hardcore, that means that the percentage can't fall below 4%. So that can be useful because you want your attendance to be higher. So if you have a decent hardcore fan percentage, then that'll be a little bit easier. These are catalogs. I do like these covers. Oh, I do have... These are kind of placeholders, though. I need to get more period-appropriate players. Some of them don't look that out of place, like this guy. Maybe this guy here. That one. Some of these don't look like they're too modern. Some of them do, though. But I want these to look a little bit more like magazines or something. So there's different brands. Originally, each brand had its own distribution of benefits. And I still need to do something like that because there's really no point in having all these brands if they're just all the same. But it's just a catalog with items in it that you can buy. And history, pretty straightforward. So this hire coach screen, it works. It's not exactly where I want it to be, but it does work. Like I can try to hire this guy. It'll tell me replacing my DC before their contract is up will cost -10 reputation per attempt. So that is to disincentivize you from just getting rid of people randomly. But you can do it. Let's see. This should be a... That should be a 1 option dialog box. Or no. That's a 2 option, yeah. We're just going to skip over. If it says none here, we can just go past. But these are all the coaches at the high school level currently available. Now, I feel like their skills are a little bit too high. But that's where it is. So we got players leaving. really like the coach duties. What this is up here is I was adding a chance to get like a suffix in your name, like junior or the third or something, but I didn't quite finish that, so it's just randomly popping up here. But I really like the coach duties because it really separates all the tasks, and sometimes you may not be doing the same stuff on different teams. Especially if you're a coordinator, because the head coach is going to set that for you. You can try to convince him to get another, to change one of these, but that'll depend on your skill. So like everything that you kind of assume you have control over in other football games is basically split up by unit and by task. So someone controls the depth chart on the defense and the offense. Someone controls the scouting. Who sets the off-season training plans? Who sets the weight training goals? Who sets the weekly practice? Who's the play caller? Who's the play advisor, right? There's going to be that sort of cooperative dynamic with play calling. Although, if you want to be like and have complete control over play calling, you can just set yourself to, change to HC. So now you have total control. But if it was like this, OC is the play caller, head coach is the advisor. It kind of tells you right here. The duty of calling general offensive decisions, such as run, pass, and going for it on fourth down. So you can just say, I want to run on this play. And then the OC, he's going to figure out the specifics of that. So he's going to pick the formation. He's going to pick what type of run play, what direction, right, all that stuff. And then same concept for defense. So I think that's going to be kind of cool. And you have to set them exactly. Else it won't let you advance. So every coordinator is going to have a different number. So that is another angle of, evaluating coaches. Maybe you want a coach that's going to be able to take on more responsibility. Maybe you want one that's going to be okay with taking less because you want to have more control. But there's still some things you want to delegate. It just depends on what you want to do and what's available. So we currently have 8 tasks or duties. The OC wants 3. We're going to have to find 2 to take off of his shoulders. Take the scheme and the practice, I guess. We'll give him the training and we'll take the scouting. And we'll do that. The DC needs 1 less. There we go. So the tryouts, I did change that recently as well. It's a very simple system. There's not a lot of like pressing buttons and, setting points. It's very, very simple. And it's more based on it's more based on what you're looking for or what you think. You see that? There's like a 3 behind like every other guy's name. That's just a bug that I forgot to fix. The way it's supposed to work is this is their scouting report. It's not the prettiest, you know, it's kind of repetitive, but what it's telling you is some information based or some information about the player's skills, right? But there is an accuracy percentage. So out of these 10, 9 of them are incorrect, right? One of these is correct. So this isn't really reliable. So if you wanted to, you could spend a point on him. And our scouting point is really low. That really should be a little bit higher for minimum skill, but again, these are like the little things I need to fix, and I've been fixing a lot of them, but there's just so many little things that you forget. But anyway, so the defense you can see is already complete. So this guy was cut and this guy was cut. And usually there's only going to be one player over how many you need. So if you need like 3 wide receivers, you're going to get 4. If you need 1 tight end, you're usually only going to get 2. And the reason for that is just to cut down on the number of comparisons you have to make. So instead of juggling like 5 guys, you're only juggling maybe 1 or 2 because the decision to as far as who gets cut only comes down to 1 or 2 players. So I can say, let's see. Let's say I want to scout this guy. So we can take a look here. We get a little bit more information. Looks like his tackling is a little bit higher than normal, or than the lowest. Apparently has a decent kicking skill. And then we might... Oh, we're out of points. So there's only 2 levels of scouting right now. When you scout once, you get a general estimate on, or a general category on how much EXP he already has. You get what their starting modifiers are, generally, or kind of masked like this. And you can see how many traits they have. You get 3 traits, 0 abilities. And if I had spent 2 points scouting him, you can just see everything. But the trick is that you're never going to be able to, usually never going to be able to spend 2 points on everyone. So you're going to have to rely on your scouting report and then making decisions based on, you know, more vague information. And then where you really want to spend your scouting points, you might spend 2 to get, you know, the best information possible. But for example, if the scouting report is already highly accurate, you get a pretty decent idea of what the player is. And so if your scouting is higher, this will be more accurate starting out. So we need to cut a lineman, cut a wide receiver, tight end, and a running back. And as far as the training works pretty much the same. So there's a low, moderate, and high intensity training plan. If it's low, then they get 10% XP, 30% morale, and 30% health. So for your players that are really hurting morale or health-wise, you might want to put them on low. Moderate, they don't get any boost to morale or health, but they do get an EXP bonus of 20%. And then there's high intensity, which gives them 30% EXP, but they take a pretty big hit to morale and health. So those specific numbers will probably have to be balanced, just like everything else. But you can see how you might pick high for some, moderate for other guys, and then low for other players. So you can prioritize, you know, maybe a player who's in better condition, maybe like this guy. At least his morale is pretty high right now. You could probably train him harder because he's in better condition. You'd probably train him pretty hard too. You want to squeeze out as much EXP without setting yourself up for failure once the off-season is over. That just depends on the player's modifiers. So this guy's pretty high in everything. Looks like we're in control of all the training. Leave it how it is. And so this tells you the results of their training. So this guy got passing +3, +5. And right now the positions are tied to specific skills. And there's only 10 skills, so you're probably going to see the same skills here for position. Not a huge amount of variance, but I think it's okay. So the tight end gets catching and blocking. Wide receivers get catching and routes. And if they don't have enough EXP to get a point, like for example this guy, then he'll just get EXP. Linebackers get shedding and coverage. DBs get coverage and catching. Kickers get kicking, and punters get punting. I'm thinking about switching or combining the kicking and punting skill into one and adding a different 10th skill. Just because I feel like kicking and punting is really specific and it's not useful for any other position group. If I just put it into one, that way I could have room for something else for that 10th skill. And I'm not totally settled on having only 10 skills, maybe 11, 12, maybe 13 at the most. But I don't want really any more than that. And the way the weight room works is pretty simple. Thought I'd fix this already, but whatever. This, I think, is irrelevant now. Let's see. We can get rid of that, actually. That one. Somewhere here, this. Yeah, that. So you can the defense doesn't have any weight training for some reason. To go back and see what's going on there. But the way this works is every player comes with a specific weight range. So this guy, he can go up or down 21 pounds. This guy, his range is 10. Every player can only change their weight a certain amount. So if you want, heavier players in a certain position, having a higher range is going to be beneficial. And so likewise, when you're acquiring players and you see that, they only have so much weight range, you can kind of see how they might have a ceiling as far as strength, because if their weight is their strength, then weight can go up by, in this guy's case, 29 pounds. And so what this is supposed to be is your coach has a skill, and it sets how much weight you can change for per session. So let's say it was 3 pounds, for example. So you could set his weight to +3 and then train him, and then he would gain 3 pounds. And the next off season, you could keep adding to it. Or you could increase your skill and get there faster. But that's not working right now. Alright. See, the defensive coordinator has 10 pounds max weight change, so. And I changed this recently, so there might be a bug or two still there. I got a letter. The letters, the letters are a little bit messy. I mean, they work. It's just really the idea with letters, for the most part, is it forces you to make decisions. So we get a solicitation here by handicapper, and he's like, do you want to accept this offer? You do. Looks like you get only 600 bucks basically, and you lose -2 rep. So that's not really worth it. So we declined that, and we got 2 rep. But there's going to be a lot of different types of letters. Not all of them are just going to be accept or decline kind of stuff. You might get certain notifications or whatever. Let me run a game. Well, So this is the press conference. This works pretty much the same as last time. Although I think the reporters are still on the 100-point scale, so That's kind of not fair. I'll have to change that. So again, the press conference is just a mini game basically that forces you to make decisions. Some will be beneficial, some won't. And the way you kind of play around with it is you have these interview points set by your, I think it's your media relations skill. And you can try to basically spin this to where it becomes positive, and it checks the reporter's focus against your media relation. And I guess your charisma goes with that, I think. So he's asking about experience. We have to pick someone to take an experience hit. They all have 0 experience. And I think I am going to allow negative experience just so that you can have some stakes and it doesn't just cap at 0. So and there's currently no flavor text for these. I need to make that text file to, you know, pull in questions that are relevant. What else? What is this? Morale? So these will just 5 might be too many options. I might just go down to 3. But you know, -2 morale to running back or -2 morale to the wide receiver. That just depends on where you want to take the hit. We could try to spin it, but I mean, we're kind of at a disadvantage. One, because the reporter's not on the 30-point scale. But let's see. So we can try to spin it, and we failed that, so we lose an interview point, and he says, please answer the question. So we're forced to answer it. So there you go. This guy we might be able to beat. He only has 13. We lost that 5 to 10, so we have to take another hit. And there we go, we beat that one. Now we can add 20 experience to, I don't know, the wide receiver. So you can see kind of the mini game behind this. It's not just asking you like specific questions, although I do intend to have certain question types that might reference stuff that happened in the game, or might reference game stats or something that's going on. But for now, it's pretty basic. And then you can see your press conference summary. So that's what happened. You can see the offensive coordinator. Not a lot going on there. You can see the defensive coordinator. But sims the game. The fast sim, still need a little work on the fast sim. It does work. It's just some of the values and the way things work needs to be adjusted. But it does spit out numbers. Got the QBR and all that stuff. Kind of an odd score there. So that's week 1. And then the broadcasts, those are working. Or the high school one is working. but it's pretty basic. Um, as far as like all the variability and the things that they can say, I haven't made those text files yet that hold all the different things they can say. But there's only a few different options that they say right now. So here's the broadcast, which I think stylistically looks about right. I was pretty lucky and I found this video with the spinning helmet. And the helmet looks time appropriate. Looks like a 90s football helmet, and they have all the techno futurism, or the, I don't know what you'd call this. The wireframe graphics, and it's like sort of like a retro futurism a little bit. I don't know. Then you got the yard lines going by. I think it looks pretty cool. Then you have the state of Arizona floating by, which is kind of cool. Week 2. Let's see. So it opens up. And it gives you 3 hooks. So QB Gage leads his claws as his offense seeks to dominate the opponent. Oh. I got Lucas leads his mains as his offense seeks to dominate the opponent. Oh, we got all 3 of the same ones. But actually, there's going to be a lot of different options. Hundreds at least, ideally thousands. But it only picked the same one, which kind of sucks, but whatever. Hello, folks. I am your host, Greg Smith, and I'm joined, as always, by Phil Stick. Welcome to CSPN Friday Night. It's week 2 in the Arizona football season. The week has had its shares of joy and heartbreak, but we're always glad for football here at CSPN. Let's get right to it. Let's take a trip to Eloy, where the Stetsons went up to face off against the Mains. Eloy lost this close game for the Mains. This moves their team to the first loss of the season. For the Stetsons, it's their first win of the season. Phil has all the details. Phil? There's Phil Stick. Eloy threw for 260 yards and ran for 196. Meanwhile, El Mirage threw for 248 and ran for 143. Eloy might need to dig deep into the playbook to find something that's going to give them that extra push. El Mirage showed off their offensive firepower in this win. So that's kind of the cycle right there. So it goes on to the next game. In Elgin, the Ducks came down to challenge the Rams. Ehrenberg landed on the better side of a 25-point game. For the Rams, this moves them to their first loss of the season. It being the first week, it's going to be a lot of the firsts, this and that. So let's actually exit. I'm going to sim a little bit more ahead. That way we can get a couple different, we got a letter. Sponsorships. 382 a week for 10 weeks. We don't have any. Oh, there's also a reputation requirement of at least 1, which we're good. So we can accept that. Let me keep going. That way we can. Now let's look at the back to the broadcasts. The Canines come down to Sibique, but can they pull out the win? The Ducks battle out with the Fish, but who will come out on top? Lil Sarge says, I look forward to this game. Well, I do too. Glad you find some value in it, though. Hello, folks. I'm your host, Greg Smith, and I'm joined as always by Phil Stick. Welcome to CSPN Friday Night. It's week 5 in the Arizona football season. There's lots of great games to get to this week, so let's get right to the action. Do I need a beta tester? Says Lil Sarge. Well, not ready for testing, but I don't know if you're in the Discord or not. If you're not in the Discord, you might want to, because that's usually where you can get daily updates and talk to other people that are following the project. But that will probably be where I get all my beta testers. If you check out the, let's see, I can just link it here. Going with this. Here we go. So that is my second devlog in the chat, and if you look at the description, the first link is the Discord. So I didn't want to just post a Discord link, just to cut down a little bit on the bots that come in. Still get bots though. It's just, I find that if you just have a naked link directly to it in a chat or something, or wherever, it's more likely to get bots. So there you go. Let's look at Elgin, where the Kings came down to challenge the Rams. Elgin were able to defeat Lenigan in this 20-point game. For the Rams, this moves them to their first win of the season. The Kings are on a 2-game losing streak. So once you have a couple games in the season, the broadcast can pick up on win streaks and loss streaks. If it's just the first week, they're just going to say, you know, first loss or first win. That is until I actually add all the other things that they can say, which is going to be a lot. So hopefully when you read this stuff, you know, there's something different every time. New combinations, new things. What's Phil Stick saying? Elgin threw for 160 yards and ran for 122. Meanwhile, Lenigan threw for 274 yards and ran for 191. Elgin did a good job of moving the ball. Lenigan might need to dig deep into the playbook to find something that's going to move, that's going to give them the extra push. And so you guys can see the cycle, what they're saying. It's pretty bare bones right now, but it does work. And so you can see right down here, there's 69 slides. You can move freely between them. My original plan for the broadcast was to use a text-to-speech engine. Not just like Microsoft Sam, but I found some pretty obscure stuff that was had pretty good performance locally, so it doesn't have to be connected to the cloud or anything, and it just runs on the computer. it runs in the command prompt. So the way I'd have to do it is I'd have to, in Godot, I'd have to write something to call up command prompt and then to input and to feed it the text that it needs to generate audio files for. And then depending on the computer that you have and how long the text is, should only take a few seconds. So I really haven't been able to test that recently, but I know the actual technology to do it, to make it work, is there. And I've done it before. It's just I haven't really messed with that in a long time. But ideally the way it works is I have these little voice models trained. And so there's different voice models that the game engine can use to generate audio files. And they're not going to be like super high end like voice generation, but it's going to be well above like Microsoft SAM level monotone robot voice stuff. Like it does sound natural. It's just the inflection's a little bit limited. But it actually sounds pretty good for it being lightweight and local. Lil Sarge says he's in. All right. Glad to have you. I see you there. Cool. So they go through all the games. And there's gonna be other stuff besides just scores. I don't know if I want to have that in the same broadcast or if I want to have separate broadcasts. But for example, once I get the random events working, which really isn't that hard. For example, let's say something happens to a player. There would be a picture of the player here, and maybe behind him the logo of the team he's on. And it would be more like headline stuff, like something, maybe the player did something off the field or something, some kind of headline. Or if it's an injury, you might see the player and stuff like that. Or a trade or whatever it is. So it would probably be a good idea to have it all in the same show. That way you can get, variety in the same broadcast. And then something else I have to fix is this little name generator. So what it's doing is it's using two different labels, and it's trying to set the distance of the second part. Depending on the length of the first, but it doesn't really know exactly where the end is for some reason. So with certain letters of certain width, it looks fine. But like with eyes and other thin letters, it doesn't, like the apparent length doesn't match, and so there's a gap. Too big of a gap. So I'll have to figure a different way to do that, but in the previous engine I was using, this was actually pretty easy. But I'll have to mess with it some more to get that bold and thin kind of name effect. We got more teams. Lots of teams. The last slide is, well, that's going to do it for this week, folks. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time. And then it takes us back. We'll decline that and get some more rep. Surprised we haven't gotten any fan or critic mail. Fan mail. Oh, there it is. Dear Coach, how did you even get this job? Connections at the bingo hall? Bravo for the truly impressive way to go down to Van Dusen by 9. So the way the critic and fan mail works is if you get fan mail, basically you get little bonuses. If you get critic mail, then you get the opposite. So it's going to ask you, you want to lose reputation or do you want to lose bank? At different times, you know, it might be better to take bank. At different times, it might be better to take reputation, but you have to take the hit because you can't advance the season without it. So we'll take the rep hit. Now we're at 3. And then if you wanted to manage this a little bit better, you can throw all these away. Now they're gone. We haven't taken any payments, so there's nothing in checkbook yet. Patrick says, howdy folks. I think you caught us right near the end, Patrick. Almost at the end. What was I gonna look for? Oh, I was gonna buy something or try to buy something. Let's see. Well, Sarge says he's getting hyped. All right. Try to buy something. Oh. It's all the same price for some reason. Come on. Okay, so we just bought that. You have to roll to buy. There's no like managing a bank account, which I think is it different. It's definitely different, but I kind of like it because you don't have to run accounting or anything. And I feel like sometimes bank accounts are kind of hard to balance because at first it's limiting, but then like in late game it just becomes, you know, you have so much money that you can just do whatever you want. So instead of that, you have a spending power as a program. So you have to roll to buy stuff. And I still need to match up, like get all the scales right, like what items generally cost depending on their rarity. I think spending power is capped at 30. So I have to scale that, and then also how much do coaches cost and all that stuff. I have to balance all of that. So we have something in orders. So we have these Serenity K110s. And it's only 1 week shipping. So it's only 1 week shipping, so we'll get it next week. So if we go ahead and advance, we'll just skip the press conference for now. The user's not going to be able to do that. It's just so I can move quickly through it. Bucks. I guess we're the Bucks. We beat the Dreadnoughts. Do we have our equipment yet? Let's see. Should get a notification. That should say 0. Hold on. Huh. Pretty sure that was working last time I checked. I'm gonna look at that for a second. Let's see. Why is the equipment not shipping? Because I definitely saw it work earlier. So if the item's shipping time is less than or equal to 0, huh. Oh, God. There we go. I think I got it. It was referencing equipment, not orders. Let's see. Patrick says working overnight. Yikes. I always hated doing that because I feel terrible in the morning. This is up my circadian rhythm or whatever. Little Sarge says, do you get to see the teams play? You will. None of that's built though. So it just sims past it. But there will be an on-field component. And it'll be different than the typical game. But it'll be more strategic. More emphasis on strategy. Let's see. So that should have shipped already, so I had to fix the number, whether it subtracts weeks before or after. I always get confused by that. I'm a very visual person, and I think in pictures, I just learned. So I can like stare at something for like 30 minutes and not even know what I'm looking at if it's like not visual enough. So I'm the worst person to be programming, actually. But no one else is going to make this game, so here I am. There we go. Order has arrived. So that just means that what you order is now in inventory. So we bought those Serenity Ks. So these current pants give us plus running and tackling and 4 damage resistance. So now we have shedding plus 3, coverage plus 2. That kind of gave us a boost to the defense. We can switch back if we want. And you can actually see the effect to the team overall. So that sets the average at 4 across the board. That sets everyone up to 5. helps the defense go up to 6. What else do we have? Cleats. These are basically the same. I need to add more variety because it's possible that 2 items are just the same, which I guess is inevitable, but Little Sarge says working overnights is a whole other beast versus day shifts. Yeah, I used to work at a gas station. Well, I worked at a gas station from like it was like 11 to 2 or something. Or it ended at 2 in the morning, and I remember just being in there feeling tired. Like that feeling like you get when you're just exhausted and you're thinking, yeah, I should probably go to bed now. It's that feeling, but you're just at a job and it's just miserable. I'm just like mopping the floors at like 1 in the morning. Like, what am I doing? That was a long time ago. I wasn't there very long. Patrick says, unlike modern games, this game is a feeler. Not too much is given. Respectfully. If you mean like the information that's provided to you, like you're not visually overwhelmed, I think that's true. There is a sort of trend in sports games to just have these screens that are just packed full of information and tiny text. And, you know, there's a fair amount of numbers on this screen, but it's nothing compared to, you know, what's become normal. And I think it's cleaner, simpler, more appealing to look at. So, Little Sarge says, this is the type of game I've been itching for. Yeah, me too. It's definitely a game that I've been trying to make for a long time. But I've been making this specific game probably for 2 years. I don't want to think that I lost like 8 months or a year when I was on the previous engine and made the switch. But I feel like I lost part of it just, you know, because all that time it took to build that. But, I mean, the project is way better now that I switched. It's way better now. So much better. So, I guess it was all worth it. But yeah, it's definitely the type of game that I want to play. We're going to quit and... let's see. Want to fix the... where is it? The names. Take those 3s off. Let me just get rid of all that for now. Different. You guys can't see what I'm doing, but it's because it's on a separate window. It shouldn't take long. Get rid of all these things. Is that it? I don't know what I did there. Okay. There we go. Patrick says, I'm painting. Little Sarge says, managing and stat nerd. Yeah, this is going to be a little bit different, though. It's not quite a sports management sim. I personally think of it more like an adventure game that's set in a 90s sports world. Because I envision a scope for the actual game world to be much, much larger. Um, really than any sports game has ever cared to do. Because it's going to cross genres a little bit with what I envision. I can't make all that right now by myself with the state that it's in, but you know, I have to start where I can start. But yeah, the big thing for me is the game world and really how expansive and how explorable it will end up being, even if it's not right now. UI looks awesome. It was worth it. Oh yeah. Little Sarge says yes, and if he feels it's better and enjoys it, then it was literally worth the time for the new engine. Yeah, it wasn't just because I thought it would be better. It was because, hold on. I need to add the ability to delete files from the game. I have to do it all through the Windows Explorer. But the previous engine I was using was JavaScript based. It was based in JavaScript, and it was a decent little engine. Pretty cool idea. JavaScript is actually a pretty fast language compared to GDScript. But the problem was the engine. It was like new. It was only being developed really by one person for the most part. And there was just too many bugs. Like too many bugs from unknown sources. It was just impossible to manage. Like it got to the point where like I couldn't even switch screens without there being a memory leak. And it could have just been because I didn't know enough about JavaScript. But man, it was really, really, really frustrating. But that specific problem of switching screens and having like a memory surge, I got past that in like an hour when I first switched engines using the same general logic. So it was definitely the best thing I could have done. Because otherwise I'd still be struggling trying to get support from one guy in Russia of all places. It's just stupid. We don't make mistakes, we make happy accidents. Words of wisdom from Bob Ross. Happy little cloud. I really, really like this keyboard. Do sports games, do games in general still have these keyboards? I know 2K had it. That's weird. Might have to add a way to move the caret here. Because if you go and hit random, the caret starts at the beginning and there's no way to change that. Yeah. I guess if you could name it like 1980 AZ, for example, might be a way to name that. Well, if this was the name of the world, it's the name of a coach. So ultimately, it will save you time in the long run. Well, yeah. Well, it'll be functional, really. I think I want to add or someone suggested that I add a like a something that shows you the options. So I'm thinking like a little, I don't know, 5 by 6 or something, like uh, tiles here. So you would be able to see like a little tile with the sprite of the glasses on it. You guys have probably seen like stuff like that in character creators before. Like you see all the glasses options here laid out, all the sideburn options, all the long hair options, and the hairstyles and everything. That way, you don't have to just look at the numbers. Let's see if we can make the most 90s looking guy we can. Definitely need the glasses. The glasses makes it a lot of help. Make him pale. Never gets out into the sun. Definitely need to add some aviators though. The Harry Potter glasses. Little Sarge says, love the 2K vibe, ESPN football. 2K5 is my all-time favorite game. Yeah, that's a great one. I was actually playing that last night on the channel. Excellent game. Tiles have to be cut, pre-cut per square foot by diameter of the room. Power goggles. Now these are more like, I don't know what you'd call these. The Bobby Bowden glasses. Seems like every person over 40 was wearing these. Be pale. With the sideburns. Gotta have the long hair. Bright green eyes. With the mustache. That looks like the guy from The Simpsons. The neighbor. Now we got this crappy team. Or the crappy logo. So let me just kind of blow through this real quick. We're gonna fly through a season. And I can show you the newspaper, or the job search newspaper. I'll probably have to call it there. So scouting's done. Tryouts. We'll need to fix the weight room, AI for the coaches. New letters. Get rid of that. I think the sponsorships aren't quite working either because or are they? I don't know. I really need to add a Sim2 function. I don't want the user to... New one? Oh, they are adding up. That's good. I set a max to 10. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but I definitely don't want unlimited sponsors. So we're going to get to the end of the season. Get to the end of the season, and then we'll look at the district title brackets and the playoff brackets. And then the postseason broadcast. And we'll have to fly through the job search process. Alright, so this is the district bracket. Simple, but I think it's appealing to look at. There's the Arizona State Championship playoff. So there's no check for mandatory mail currently in this room, so we can just skip past it. Forgot to look at the broadcasts. Week 15. With a third playoff win on the line, the Romans battle out with the Claws. The Tunnelers battle out with the Pit Vipers with the third playoff win on the line. Hello folks, I am your host, Greg Smith, and I'm joined as always by Phil Stick. Welcome to CSPN Friday night. It's week 15 in the Arizona football season. It's been a week full of ups and downs, and we're going to bring it all to you. In Bitter Springs, the Pit Vipers went up to face off against the Tunnelers. In round 3 of the playoffs, Folds came out victorious in a 13-point game over Morandi. For Folds, they move on to a 5-game winning streak. For the Pit Vipers, this is their 5th loss of the season. Phil has all the details. And then Phil says, Folds threw for 345 yards, ran for 113. Meanwhile, Morandi threw for 207 yards and ran for 189. Folds showed off their offensive firepower in this win. Morandi might need to dig deep into the playbook to find something that's going to give them that extra push. We've seen those lines before. And that's the end of this week's games. We look forward to seeing you again next time here on CSPN. Good night. That's the final. I think this broadcast is pretty short because there's only one game. In Benson, the Tunnelers went up to face off against the Claws. In the Arizona State title, Folds were defeated in this 2-point game by Benson. For the Claws, they're on a 4-game winning streak for Folds. This moves them to the 3rd loss of the season. Then Phil has his shtick. And that's the end. Hopefully nothing breaks here. There might still be code referencing the previous skill structure, I guess. Probably what it is. Darn. Hoping I'd get to the interview and newspaper. Curious though, I'm checking what that could be. Probably the coach skill. Get coach skill. I know it's not very interesting to look at, but we're doing it live. Coach contracts. Get skill. No. Oh well. I'll have to deal with that later. Well, I guess we'll just call it there. You can look at this pretty loading screen. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me, guys. Sucks that we had to end it on a little bug, but I think it's because I had recently changed the skill structure to some stuff, and there might still be 1 or 2 things that were dependent on the previous skill structure. That's probably what it is, because this definitely was working before that. So, but yeah, I think that's gonna do it for me. Unless you guys have any questions, I think we're gonna call it there. Little Sarge says, I'm still hyped. Have a good night. Alright. Alrighty, folks. Yeah, that's gonna do it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'll be seeing you guys in the next one.